Die Menschen werden ewig zu den Sternen hochschauen. Und das tun sie immer aus dem gleichen Grund.
Wieso?
Um zu erkennen, wo wir hingehören.
Hey, du musst noch deine Hausaufgaben machen. Vielleicht kann Angus dir dabei helfen.
Angus, komm her!
Man verlangt nach mir.
Abend in unserem Studio Milliardär Marcus Brown.
Jeder verdient die Chance, seinen Traum zu leben. Wir ziehen 12 Namen aus dem Lotteriehut und das Publikum stimmt ab, wer mich auf dem ersten kommerziellen Raumflug begleitet.
Altersbeschränkung 18 bis 65.
Du siehst aus wie 65.
Leiden Sie an Herzproblemen? Nein.
Du hast dich beim Wettbewerb angemeldet?
Die Finalisten im Ventura-Weltraumwettbewerb: Connor Cranston, Adrian Chimenidi, Angus Stewart.
Du wirst ein Astronaut.
Kann ich auch?
Was?
Zeit zu fliegen.
Weil ich keine zweite Gelegenheit bekommen werde. Und ich wäre ein verdammter Narr, wenn ich sie verstreichen ließe.
Du schaffst das. Ich weiß es. Mein Dad. Man fragte ihn, er wusste es.
Angus wird Astronaut.
Okay, so I'm here in Hamburg at the premiere of the beautiful film Astronaut, and with me is Shelagh McLeod, the writer and director of the film. So, Shelagh, this is not only your directorial debut, but you also wrote the story, as I just said. What was the inspiration for the film, and how did you come up with the story?
Well, I had kind of stepped behind the camera and gone back to university and taken a couple of degrees and written 3 short films, and I'd been talking to my mum a lot about wanting to become a director, and anyway my mum became very ill and I had to move her into a nursing home, and I love my mum and I used to go and see her quite a lot, and in the nursing home gardens there was an old man in a wheelchair who would never come in. He was in the rain and you know, the night was falling and he'd be sitting there staring up at the sky. And one day I was curious and I went and I sat next to him and I said, "What is it that you're looking for up there? What do you want?" And he said, "Another go." And it kind of broke my heart a bit because I realised that he perhaps had not achieved what he wanted to in his life, and maybe he still had dreams and was still dreaming even then. And you know, nursing homes, they can be joyous places, but they are places people go to, you know, at the end of their lives, or to when they're winding down. And I just thought about this. My mother died fairly shortly afterwards, and I kept thinking about this old guy, and I thought, what maybe would this old guy have done if he'd had another go? And my dad died when he was 61, and he had always wanted to go to space. And I've always wanted to be an astronaut, above acting, above anything. I wanted to be an astronaut. So I thought maybe this old guy wanted to be an astronaut all his life. And maybe he had always been on the ground, you know, fixing roads, runways, but he'd always been looking up. And that was how I started the story. Well, I started the character of Angus, so that's how it began.
It's lovely. It's always wonderful to see the incredible Richard Dreyfuss on a big screen, and I think he's the perfect match for that role. How did you get him on board?
He's a real, God knows. I mean, we were just really lucky. We'd been working this project for a very long time, and you know, draft after draft, and script after script, and it went on and on. But anyway, we finally started to attract a lot of interest. I mean, you beg enough people for money, they finally go, all right, have some, go away, go make a movie. But they all needed a star. And so I went to see my agent in Canada, the brilliant Jennifer Goldhar. And I said to her, "Jennifer, who the hell are we going to get to play Angus? It's the pivotal role, it's a lead, and we need somebody brilliant." And we tossed around a few names, and she said, "What about Richard Dreyfuss?" And I said, "Well, we'll never get him. You know, I'm a nobody. You know, you'll say, who the hell is Shelagh McLeod?" But she said, and I also thought he was too young. You know, he was in my head still, 56. So anyway, she said, "I'll send the script to his manager, And his manager read the script and wrote to Jess, the producer, he just said, cute script, I'll send it to Richard. And that was the beginning of the journey. And then Richard and I had a Skype together, and we talked about my favourite and his favourite science fiction writer, which is Robert Heinlein. And we didn't really talk about the film. And Jess and I were very nervous when we were talking to him, because we thought, oh God, we don't want to mention the movie, he might say no. And then, so we just thought, keep going forward with it. So we had another Skype with him. And again, we couldn't say, will you do it, Richard? And he finally said to me, well, when do we start? And I went, oh my God. So we hung up and we said, did you say yes? I think that was yes, or maybe, and anyway, it was a yes. So that's how it happened.
That's lovely. I can only imagine how hard or stressful it might have been to direct for the first time. So how long did it take from the idea to the final film?
Well, it took, I have to say, about 7.5 years. It took a long time. I mean, it took a long time because I had to get the script in the right state. And then the thing about, I had directed shorts before, putting my glasses on, but it's my big feature, and it's finding the right producer. And I hate to say this, but you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find the prince. And lots of people said, oh yes, I'll produce your movie, I love it, but they're not real producers, And finally I met Jessica Adams, who looked like my great-grandchild when I met her. She's so young. And she liked the script, and she said, and she wasn't promising me anything. She said, let's keep going on this journey together. So we did, and I was almost ready to give up. And she came along, and then we worked on it for 2 years together. Went to Berlin, went everywhere, basically, people say asking for finance, but I say begging for finance. And it happened that way, and it was because of her diligence and hard work and her skill as a producer. And then we got joined up with Sean Buckley, who was brilliant, our other producer, and then we were greenlit.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you're filming with an acting veteran such as Richard Dreyfuss,
yes.
How do you direct him, or do you just let him flow?
Yes, he is possibly one of the best actors in the world, I think. I mean, I said to him, we had a film festival in March in America, and I think the audience asked me who's my favourite actor, and I said, well, actually my favourite actor is Gene Hackman. And Richard looked at me and I said, and my other favourite actor is Richard Dreyfuss, because I think Gene Hackman was one of the best actors in the world.
Absolutely.
And I think Richard's right up there with him. So how did I direct him? Well, I think Richard, like most of the stars I've worked with as an actor, likes to work on the floor. He's a very creative, collaborative person. The crew loved him. He was great fun to work with. And he had lots of brilliant ideas. And I think the only real direction I gave him was, we talked about the character of Angus, and he was worried that Angus was a bit passive, and he wanted to make him more upbeat. He said, because I'm known for my certain energy. And I said, I know, but Richard, you're such a brilliant actor, and this character is not upbeat when the film starts. He's just been told he can't drive anymore. He's got to live with his daughter. His health is not good. He's pretty much on, in God's waiting room. And let's make that journey of that character. And together we found it. But, the work is his. He's a magnificent actor.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I was very nervous to ask you a previous question. Terrified the first day, yeah.
Yeah. There's one perfect line in the film that almost brought me to tears. It's when Angus said, well, I didn't call you on the day she died because I was too busy losing her.
Mm.
How did you come up with that sentence? Was it always like this?
I think it was, actually. I mean, I think Richard nailed that. I think he might have come up with, I always had the day I was losing her, but I was too busy when I lost her. I can't remember, but Richard sort of phrased it in a slightly different way, but that's his performance, You can give a line to an actor and they can just make it they spin it into gold, and he spun that line into gold. So yeah, and I suppose I came up with that scene because it was really, I think when you lose a parent, you feel tremendous guilt that it's your fault somehow as a child. I mean, I'm one of those people, I'm a bit tenacious, and I'm also a terrible old Taurus. So my mother was dying, and the nurses were telling me she was dying, and I was going, no, I think if we tried a drug on this, and what about that, and if you changed a drip to this, and then when she died, I felt tremendous guilt, and I couldn't really handle me being emotional with her when she was dying. And I felt guilt about that, because I sort of cut my emotions off, because I think it was too much for me. The actual grief of losing my mother, I thought I must contain control. So I remember writing that scene, and I do remember tears pouring down my face when I wrote it, because I think Angus couldn't handle her dying. So it was a feeling that I really empathised with, and that's why I put that scene in, actually.
The film was supposed to come out on March 20 in the UK, but then COVID-19 came around, sadly. That must have been devastating when you spend so much time in making this movie, and at the final line,
It was awful, because I got the call from the Parkland distributor, who's great, on the 17th or 16th of March. And I knew why he was calling, and he said, and I said, no, people will still be going to the cinema. This film deserves to be seen in the screen. We shot it anamorphic. My whole point about making this film was that it touches the audience, that, how often do you go and see a film, and you can go and see a film on your own, and you sort of connect with the character's plight, and I thought it deserved to be seen on the big screen, and of course then he said, I don't know, it doesn't look good, and then I think he called me on the 18th and said, we're cancelling the release, and they'd done a great job. It was in, I think, 80, Odeon picked it up, Cineworld picked it up, so it was a substantial release for my first film, so it was obviously, I tried my best, but COVID won, unfortunately, and it was the right thing in the end, we couldn't put it on.
Yeah. The film had its world premiere at the Edinburgh International Film Festival in June 2019, where I personally saw it first.
Yes.
And I still remember all my fellow critics coming out of the film and saying, well, this is it, that's the film we've been waiting for.
Which you just told me, and I'm really pleased. I'm going to tell everybody I'm going to get on the phone after this interview and tell everybody.
How do you recall what happened in Edinburgh?
It was funny, because it's such a build-up. We took the train up with my friends, and I've been so excited, we'd all been so excited about it. And then when you get to the event, it happens so fast, and it's so electric, and you'll be bustled, and the fans were out, which was amazing, and they came out, and the press corps were fantastic at the top of the cars, the top of the beautiful, the observatory we were at, weren't we? That was where it was. And Richard flown in from California that morning, and it was just really exciting, and I was nervous. I was very, very nervous, because more than anything, it doesn't really, it matters that critics like the film, of course it does. I'm grateful for the nice reviews we got, but more importantly, that the audience likes the film. That means everything, and it means everything to me, the producers, the cameraman, everybody. So I sat there because it's the first time I'd seen it, it's the first screening in the world of it. So I was really, really nervous. But at the end, one of the associate producers came and was sitting sort of next to me, and I'm a nightmare to sit next to in the cinema, because I was going, oh my God, are they bored? They're looking at their watch, and actually they're just scratching their head or something. I overreact, but at the end he said, well done, we loved it. And I thought, well. And then we had the Q&A with Richard on stage afterwards.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah. It was a brilliant experience being in Edinburgh.
How important are those festivals for a small film, just to get visibility?
100% important. It totally. Edinburgh was fantastic to us. They did everything. Mark Adams, who ran the festival then, I think he's retired from that now, but he was so supportive of our film. And we met him in Toronto the year before, and we knew that we wanted Edinburgh to take the film, but he said, look, I have to watch the film, and I said, but you're the one, this is, and of course he will not accept a film if he doesn't like it, it's not gonna, there's no favours, there's no amount of cash you could chuck at somebody, it doesn't work like that. And when he said we'd love to take this film, we were over the moon, absolutely over the moon. And in terms of exposure, huge, and also in terms of gravitas, it has such gravitas to the film that Edinburgh is a really well-respected, well-liked, well-received film festival, so it meant ton to us, yeah.
You shot Astronaut in November in Ontario, Canada. Can be very cool at that time, at that place. How was the shooting?
Well, I've spent a couple of winters in Canada, and but they weren't that bad. And before we shot, I went to this shop called Marks, and they have not expensive, slight snow gear, but it's not really snow gear. And I saw these boots, and I thought, oh, they really look like director's boots, and they had a bit of little fluffy fur or fake fur, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to look like a director wearing those. So I bought them, and I bought a pair of, under what are they called, thermals, and I thought, that'll do. And we were fine for the first 10 days, and then overnight, the thermometer dropped to -30, and I woke up, and there was a wind chill factor on top. And I went onto the set, and we were shooting outside all day, and I'm pretty skinny, and I get really, when I get cold, I just can't warm up. And I started to shake, and I thought, I'm not going to make this, this is ridiculous. So I had layers and puffer coats on. It wasn't like I was wearing a t-shirt, but it was also, my feet were freezing, and I went up, and the gaffer saw that I was just freezing. Brilliant Edwin Lau. I love Edwin Lau, because he looked at my boots, he said, those boots are stupid. And I said, tell me what I do. And he said, I've got some boots for you. So he bought these crappy old boots out of his. They were 4 sizes too big for me. And they just looked like leather boots. I put them on my feet, and I wore them for the rest of the shoot. I wore Edwin Lau's boots for the rest of the shoot, and my feet were never cold again. But it was brutal. And the coldest day, I think, apart from the donkey sanctuary, was on the airfield. When we shot the airfield, that was just unbelievable.
It looked really cold.
Yeah, it was freezing.
So, when you think back on the process of the film being developed and being shot, what was the biggest obstacle you had to overcome? The biggest problem you had?
Before we went to camera, or
whatever. Is there anything you said?
I think the biggest obstacle really was getting people to believe that I could direct this film, because I was unknown. And I think it's like saying, will you pay for my house? I've just got a few planks here, but will you give me some money for this house that hasn't been built yet? And by the way, I've never built a house before, but it's going to be okay. I think that was a real obstacle, but Jessica never made me feel that it was, my inexperience that was a problem. She was so supportive. And I suppose I really enjoyed the post-production. I've done it on my short films. There's a moment of kind of real creative, because when you're shooting, you're just in the moment, you're just dealing with problems, you've got people asking a million questions, you've got snowstorms, you've got somebody slips over in the ice, oh my god, are they going to break a leg? It's all that sort of stuff. Did we make our day? Did we get all the shots that we wanted? And in post, it's sort of like, well, we've got what we've got, now let's go and find the story. So I really enjoyed that, but I think the obstacles really came before, and also the obstacle were that we had to reshoot a very big scene that I loved, which was when Angus and his family go to the security gate of the Ventura competition and beg their way in. And we shot that originally outside Hamilton airfield. They've got a lovely old airfield there with all the old planes. And it was a massive blizzard and a snowstorm, and it was dumping down with snow. The actors were covered in snow, they were freezing, but it really, and Scott McClellan did a beautiful wide shot on an anamorphic lens, and it was just fantastic, because the elements were fighting against these people who were fighting to get in, and we had to reshoot that scene 6 months later, because it just didn't cart together, because we'd shot the previous stuff before, and we just couldn't make it work.
When you now see the final film, is it exactly what you had in mind in the first place?
In my head.
Or did it change?
Well, I think the original script, before I ended up with the final draft, it was a much bigger film. There were many more scenes. It was a much more complex plot. There were scenes where Jim was coming on board, and he took Angus to get his hair all trimmed, and some makeup put on his face to look younger. He broke him out of the nursing home, and they bonded, and there was a lot. Then there was a big passport fake making scene, but I knew the budget would dictate. I knew it was, so I just went back to the script and I kept drilling down what this story was about. What's it really about? And it's really about friendship and love and having a dream all your life, and then you have a chance to achieve that dream and everybody uniting behind you, and then they let Angus go, knowing they'll probably never see him again, but they let him go because they're so glad in their hearts that he got what he wanted, he achieved, and by his action, you know, he brought life to the nursing home again, you know, and that made me feel really happy, because nursing homes can be quite sad, and I just thought, I think everybody needs an Angus in the nursing home.
Absolutely. I think the film is not missing anything. It's perfect the way it is. But would you have done something different if you had, let's say, an unlimited budget or
yes,
unlimited
I think
time?
I would have made more space. We had an amazing Ed Wilmot who designed the rocket and did all the science with me, because, you know, it's a big learning curve to me, learning about liquid oxygen and OLite rock. I had to do all the research with him, and he's like a real super bright guy. And he had done a previs of the plane, the Ventura, flying low and over the buildings and up through the sky, and we saw outside and it was swooping down. It was amazing, and it gave this real feeling of huge flight, and you see you've got the real majesty of this takeoff and it leaving Earth. And I think if I could do it again and a bit more money, I would have liked more of that. Yeah.
And what about your future? Is there anything you can already talk about, new projects?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, fingers crossed. So I've written a script called Nexus, and you know, of course I've been working on that for a few years, but a year and a half ago, Meryl Streep and Nicole Kidman's The Writers' Lab chose the script out of, you know, thousands really, and they picked 12 writers, and I was one of them. And so I went to the Writers' Lab in New York and workshopped Nexus, and it was the most incredibly helpful thing I've done. And now I've got producers attached, and it was also just a finalist at the Page Screenwriting Awards, which is quite a posh screenwriting competition, and we hope to shoot next year, fingers crossed. It's about a female astronaut. Yeah.
That sounds very interesting. I'm really looking forward to see that. Thank you very much for the interview. Thank you very much for this beautiful film, and good luck with it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.